construction industry is central and important to a country's development. There's construction in literally every sector of a country's economy. And that is why today on Power Talk, we're so pleased to host the Executive Director of the National Construction Authority, Engineer Maurice Akech, to talk to us about safety, general compliance, sustainability, and all the work that they're doing to keep the country's infrastructure safe. Thank you very much, Engineer, for joining us on Power Talk today. I'd like to begin with the mandate of the National Construction Authority. We understand, given life by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, but tell us what you do, what your mandate is, and your role in the country.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for having me. And I also want to thank the Raw Media. And I want to greet all Kenyans who are watching this show. National Construction Authority is a creation of by Act of Parliament in 2011. So it's been in operation for about 12 years or so. In fact, we celebrated our 10th year in December 2022. And what was exciting is that the reason or the purpose for which this particular very important agency for the industry and for the economy was created is basically to oversee and coordinate the development of the construction industry in Kenya. Previously, of course, issues to do with the regulation, issues to do with capacity building, issues to do with the advisory were not under one roof. They were being done through different ministries. So this particular institution was brought together to put all this under one roof so that it can be done from a central point of view. In a nutshell, it has a number of functions, but I can classify them into three. One of them is regulation. By regulation, I mean any contractor doing construction business in this country, whether they are local contractors, that is local businesses doing construction business in Kenya, or whether they are from outside the country, must get a license from National Construction Authority to be able to practice, whether they are doing a project in construction of houses, whether they are doing a project in water or road sector or energy sector, any other construction you think about, that particular contractor must get a license. And we have also categorized them in different capacities. Category 1, which is the biggest contractor, Category 8, which is the smallest contractor, and the rest falling in between. Within those categories, they also have different class of works. Class is now the specifics they do. Under the regulatory mandate also, we have the accreditation of construction workers, skilled construction workers, and site supervisors. Every skilled construction worker working on a construction site must get accreditation card.
So these are what, plumbers, electricians?
These are trades like plumbing, electricians, masons, welders, steel fixers. There are about 56 trades in the country. Traditionally, we know about 7. All these have to be accredited by National Construction Authority, plus their supervisors. Okay. This is a mark of excellence. This is a mark of quality. This proves that they actually have what it takes do the job in a manner that is safe and meets the standards for the project that they're doing. Of course, we're also registering projects. This is where now, after the project has been conceived, fully designed, it's now ready for construction. Prior to the commencement of construction works, at the time of commencement, the developer, 30 days before commencement of the work, or the client or the employer must ensure that this project is registered by NCA. Why do we do this? Very important, because it is good to know whether this project complies with all statutory requirements as per all the laws of the country. For instance, if a construction of a house or a building is approved by the county, we have to check that. It's approved by, if it requires environmental license, it's approved by NEMA. If it is near a water body, it's approved by the Water Resources Authority. If it's near airports, it's approved by the airport authorities. Yes. Or for the airspace, approved by the KCA because of height and so on and so forth. And any other approval that may be necessary. At that time, you have also identified a contractor license by NCA whose license is commensurate with that work that you're supposed to do. It has a consultant, either an engineer, an architect, or a quantity surveyor, or any other consultant that is commensurate with the scope of that work. Then, at the same time, we must ensure that we know the cost of the project. So we basically have a database at the end of the registration of that project of what that project entails. Of course, we also do due diligence because we ensure that that project will be done where it was approved to be done.
Okay.
Then lastly, with the regulatory mandate, we also go out on all construction sites and do quality assurance to check whether the projects comply with what they say they'll do at the point of registration. This is very important for our economy, and it ensures that everything is done according to the standards and according to the required laws. The second pillar of our mandate is basically capacity building. It's expected that technologies will keep changing. Materials will keep coming new because of new innovations. And how do we keep our contractors, how do we keep our fundis appraised with the new technologies? So we carry out continuous training from time to time to ensure that our contractors are in sync with the new technologies and they are doing the right thing from time to time. This training is important to build their capacity in terms of their management, of how they can carry out the projects, as well as the capacity on technical, so that the skills and safety of the works is also guaranteed. Apart from capacity building, we also do advisory. Today, if there's any person looking for information about construction, they can come to NCA and that information will be availed. So we are given a mandate to advise the industry through the cabinet secretary responsible for construction in terms of what needs to be done. So this is very important for our industry. In fact, it's good to confirm that if you look at NCA, the way it is structured and all the functions given to it, it is expected that at the end of the day, everything that affects construction is regulated through that particular institution. And of course, lastly, we also have, as a regulator, the responsibility to develop standards for construction, enforce those standards, as well as check compliance. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and so let's talk about some of that, including now the regulation, around construction in this country. The building code has been in existence since the late 1960s. I understand there's a push to repeal that building code. Why is that important, and what does that mean for the safety of Kenyans with the projects that they encounter?
Very good question. So the current building code that is in place, until it is repealed, was approved way back in 1968. It's many years ago. In 1968 today, Yvonne, many things have changed. Even the materials we are using have changed. Technologies have changed. Even the fundis, the skills have changed. So many things have changed. Even there are things that were not there before and they are now here, like the environmental or climate change and so on and so forth. So way back in 2020, previously up to between 2011 and 2020, National Construction Authority within the functions did not have provision to enforce and develop and enforce the building code. But in 2020, we were lucky through a miscellaneous amendment, through the Business Laws Amendment Act in Parliament in March 2020. NCA National Construction Authority Act was amended to introduce under Section 5 the aspect of development and enforcement of the building code, and of course under Section 42, the development of regulations of the same code. So fast forward, we started now working on the amendment or the repeal or amendment that will lead to the repeal of the current building code. And there are quite salient differences between the old code, as we call it, and the code that is proposed. And the proposed code gives space to what we call flexibility. If you look at the old code, it was very static, even in terms of materials. What it says is that if you're building a wall, for instance, if I give an example for us to understand, it says a wall should be 200 millimeter thick, or 8 inch, or 9 inch for those who understand, whichever side of metric you are in. It also says that it must be made of, for instance, Nairobi bluestone. But look, if you're building outside Nairobi, if the bluestone is already out of the natural deposit, the quarries, does it mean you cannot build? So the new code gives recognition of that and now gives flexibility, so that it gives what we call performance requirement of that, what that material should meet. As long as it meets that certain performance requirement, what you make it of does not matter. That gives space for growth of economy and the innovators of materials to come up with any material that can meet certain performance requirements. The other aspect that has been introduced is the issue of environmental consideration in the materials, that they must be sustainable in a sense that they meet the environmental requirements. Sustainability can be either economic, can be social, can also be environmental. The other aspect that is also very key, and this is not in the old code, is the aspect of what we call hazard resilient designs. What this means is that in the world today, we have so many hazards.
Yeah.
For instance, we have climatic hazards. You can talk of floods. You can talk of winds. So when adverse floods occur, the design should be able to respond so that you don't have structures collapsing.
So climate resilient.
Yes, climate resilient structures, or the things that will withstand whatever adverse climate that comes through. Things like earthquakes, things like landslides. That is now catered for in the new code. It's also important to note that the new code gives emphasis to safety of the structures. It gives emphasis to the well-being of the surrounding. I'll give you an example. If you're doing a new house today, after the code is approved, and that new house must not interfere with the existing house in the neighborhood, as long as that existing house was also done using the same code. To the extent that it should give you proper ventilation, should not prevent light from coming into your house, and so on and so forth. So it talks about how you site. Siting means how you place your house to be able to...
Within the community.
So that it does not affect the other house that is already existing within that space. So it's very important to note that the new code is going to address all these things, and it's going to be the game changer as far as safety and standards construction industry is concerned.
Okay,
once it is promulgated.
So you don't have a residential and then you've got this, tall skyscraper that's sort of peeping into your house.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. Look, one of the times that I think we encounter the National Construction Authority is when we've seen, buildings collapse in the country. And so this final question is on, you've talked about licensing contractors, right? What assurances can you give Kenyans about what you are doing to, for instance, tighten that process or to enforce the safety of construction sites, not just for those who are working on them or for the eventual users of the same? What does the NCA have, to ensure that there is general compliance, particularly of safety in the industry?
Thank you for that question. We're actually doing three things at the moment, or focusing on three things. The one I've just spoken about, the one for the building code, which will ensure that there are proper standards that will enhance safety in that space once it's approved. And very soon it will be approved because as we speak now, it's already been, it's at a very advanced stage. And hopefully in the next few months or so, it should be up there for use. The other thing we are doing is on the issue of standards, or the tool for evaluating contractors is currently under review. What is this tool? This is called the revised evaluation criteria. For us to issue a license to a contractor, there's normally an evaluation tool. A contractor cannot just come and apply for a license and we say, yes, you're good to get it. There is a checklist. There is an evaluation criteria that we normally use. The one that we currently use was done way back in 2013. That's more than 10 years ago. Currently, we're working on one that will be more robust, will be more responsive to the quality of the license we issue to the contractor. So what are we doing? We are giving more emphasis to the technical aspect of the contractor rather than the financial. So we are giving a score of 70% on the weight on the technical evaluation, as opposed to the 30% on the financial, meaning as long as you're technically qualified and you have 100%, that means you already have 70. Okay. Now, the financial will only account for the 30%. Remember, for you to get category 1, which is the biggest, you need to get 80% and above. That is something technical, but just for the purpose of starting an A, basically. Okay. If you score 10, you get 8. That's how it works. But we've given emphasis on the technical. The other emphasis we are giving on this tool that is currently has gone through public participation and is now being taken through legal drafting is what we call the experience. Previously, we were focusing more on the documents you give us. But right now, we are focusing on the experience as a contractor that you're telling us this is what you have done, and we know you can do it. So in a nutshell, that is an area we're working on. The other issue that is very key to note is that up to about 1.5 years ago, we didn't have an enforcement unit within National Construction Authority. Previously, we have a mandate actually to check compliance on sites, and if you find a site is non-compliant, either there is no licensed contractor or there is no issues of safety being taken care of, like the issues of safety nets, we could close that site. And if we close a site, that's the maximum we could go. We could come again and visit and close the site. Yeah. But after 1.5 years ago, in collaboration with the National Police, we now have onboarded a unit within our agency of a number of some police officers who work very closely with us. And every time we have an issue of non-compliance, and this notoriety, if I may call it, we go, we visit.
Close the site, you go back.
Yeah. We do what we call an enforcement action. Okay. Meaning basically we collaborate, they'll come and carry on the arrest, then the case will be taken to court. So we're collaborating with the courts to ensure that justice is meted. And within that amendment that was done in 2020, as I mentioned before, there was also a very key introduction. Previously, we didn't have penalties. But in 2020, we were given a penalty where if there's any offender, willful offender, they can either be, when they're taken to court and they're found guilty, they can either be fined a fine of not more than 1 million or a jail term of not more than 3 years or both, depending on how the judge will find it. So that's now what we are dealing with. That is really enhanced the space of compliance in the sector. You know, sometimes you need the carrot and the stick, because sometimes the stick alone may not work, the carrot alone may not work, but both sometimes when they're blended very well, they work very well. So with that kind of introduction of that enforcement unit, working in collaboration with the National Police Department, Service Department, we have now seen a good improvement in the sector.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Your last comments now, in a minute, as to what to look forward to, and what assurances you're giving to Kenyans about building safety in the country. In about a minute. Well,
currently we are taking advantage of the booming construction sector, especially on the space of the affordable housing. We believe that with adequate training of construction workers using the platform that the government has given through the affordable housing, at the end of those projects, we'll have quite a huge number of trained construction workers who now, even they're engaged in what we call private development, they'll be able to do a project with high quality and safety as expected. Now, what we are working on in the next 5 years or so is to have an industry that has got what we call a construction industry information system. Currently, we have different projects happening across the country. Of course, all our services are online on the technological space, but what we're looking at is that every project that is happening, by touch of a button in a dashboard, you can be able to know the status of that project, which project contractor is working on it, which engineer, which architect, depending on the scope of the project, and who is the client, and when it's been delivered or handed over, so that even in several years to come, you can check and know who did that project and how it was done, and so on and so forth. This will also be very important for maintenance of such a project in terms of, because during operation, projects deteriorate and they need to be maintained. Yeah. And there's nothing as good as maintaining something whose record and information you have in the database. Yeah. So we are looking for coming up with what we call construction industry information system, to be able to help us in this space.
All right.
Thank you.
Good. We look forward to that. Of course, building and infrastructure safety is something that we all care deeply about. Thank you very much. Speaking with me today on Power Talk has been Engineer Morris Akech, the Executive Director of the National Construction Authority. That's Power Talk. Invasion truce. TSC replaces Isongo teachers after talks with MCAs from Western Kenya.